Hello, welcome to Fictional or True. I'm fictional, and today, as you can see on the chalkboard behind me, we are talking about tea versus coffee. Now, I could make this a really long episode. I have a fair bit of thoughts and a lot of information about tea and coffee, but I have ice cream next to me and I don't want it to melt, so I'm going to keep this quick. To start out, I'm going to get out of the way the etymology, the definitions. Basically, this is all stuff I remember based on research. So to start off, tea only truly describes four types of teas, even though most people think of it as herbal teas being the same thing as like green tea and black tea. It turns out that's not true. So all true tea, that is just tea by definition, comes from one plant called Camellia sinensis. And this is where we get white tea, green tea, oolong tea, and black tea. And the difference between these teas is about how long they let the plant sun dry and then how long the harvested material is roasted before it's turned into the tea, turned into the tea leaves or packaged as a tea bag. So, to get that out of the way, then herbal teas are something separate. Herbal tea is the common name for what is referred to as a tissaine. And a tissaine is a beverage created by steeping or submerging grounds, herbs, or plant matter in water. So when you're making, let's say, peppermint tea, it's not one of those four true teas because it doesn't come from Camellia sinensis, but it is a tissaine, and so it's an herbal tea. But what else is made by steeping or submerging something in water? Well, you pass water through coffee grounds. So coffee is a tissaine, and thus coffee is actually kind of tea, which means tea is the best, right? I'm not going to make it that easy, but technically you can say tea is the best because coffee is a kind of tea. The more you know. But to make this an actually fun episode, even though I have ice cream that's actively melting as I speak, I would personally say I prefer tea. So the reason for this is that coffee and tea are both known to be caffeinated beverages, though most people do know that coffee generally has a lot more caffeine in it than tea. I don't remember the exact proportions, but I want to say coffee has over 100 milligrams of caffeine per, I think, 8-ounce serving, whereas like a bottle of Coca-Cola, I want to say, has 90 milligrams. And then I think black tea is 40 milligrams, but I might be mixing it up with green tea. Again, this is all from research that I did a while back, so I might have those numbers wrong. But the point is that coffee has a really long, really high amount of caffeine compared to black tea. Black tea has more caffeine than green tea. Green tea has more caffeine than white tea. And when it comes to coffee, you would think, oh, well, the darker it is, the more caffeine it has. It's actually the opposite. So while tea is, the lighter it is, the less caffeine it has, coffee is, the darker it is, the less caffeine it has. So your dark roast coffee is going to have less caffeine than your light roast. That's something to keep in mind. If you want really high caffeine concentration, maybe go for a light roast espresso. So I have found that in my personal experience, if I drink too much coffee too quickly, I tend to get jittery, and I basically get heart discomfort. My chest just gets really uncomfortable. So I prefer to stick to drinking black tea. Now, I might have more black tea in a day than I will have coffee. When I drink coffee, I am drinking it purely because I want the flavor of it. So if I don't like the flavor of coffee, I will not want to continue drinking it. I will not go back for more. The only thing that keeps me back from getting more tea is laziness. That is it. So I find it is easier to drink more tea because of the lower caffeine content, and because I just prefer it more. It's harder to mess up the taste of a good tea. Now, when it comes to putting sugar in it, that totally changes it. I have found that black tea, with and without sugar, has a different taste, but I've found that less with coffee. So I think if you want to preserve the taste of coffee, you can put sugar in it, whereas black tea, at least, will pull out a whole new flavor when you put sugar in it. So, which is better? This is a really tough question, and it does come down to personal preference, but thinking back, again, based on my surface level knowledge, I'm pretty sure that tea was actually prescribed as a medicinal remedy in China and Japan. And this is because tea is known to have health properties. I don't know if coffee has these health properties, but what I do know is that coffee has been, I believe, proven to help reduce risk of a couple of types of cancer. So I think tea is better for your overall health, and you think of drinking a cup of tea and elevating your mind space. So tea might kind of have a psychosomatic effect a little bit and make you feel better about yourself when you drink a good cup of tea, and it really feels earned, whereas coffee is that thing where you drink to get through the day every now and then. So I think there's also a different emotional connotation behind each one. My personal preference is tea. I prefer tea over coffee, but when I drink coffee, I'm not drinking it for the caffeine. I am drinking it for the taste and the experience of drinking coffee. So that wraps up the limited thoughts I have on tea versus coffee. I hopefully got that out quick enough where my ice cream will not be a puddle next to me. So thanks for tuning into this episode. I have been trying to put out my episodes on Wednesday nights. I think this is going pretty well for me, and I'm going to try to keep this up. So tune in next week for the, maybe 5 to 10 minutes at this point, episode on versions of immortality in fiction and literature. So in case you didn't know, these videos are not scripted. I try to do these in as few takes as possible because this is me thinking out loud. That's what this mini podcast series is. And I don't know where it's going to go by the end of it. So that's what's going to happen with the versions of immortality episode next week. So tune in for that. It's going to get a little crazy, but it should be fun and informative. So thank you for listening to this episode of the Just Thinking mini podcast series. I'm fictional. Have a good one.